Thank you for joining us today, Carolyn. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Let's just get straight into it. We are in the midst of Britain's worst health and economic crisis. As you know, for many, it's a living nightmare. For you, what's keeping you up at night?
I think, like many people, the uncertainty in particular, there's still a great deal of uncertainty in all our lives. I think it's affecting our business lives, obviously. It's affecting our personal lives because you can't really make a plan. Even though we feel like we're emerging from this, particularly in Britain, the rest of the world is at very different stages of emerging. And I feel I describe it a little bit as a twilight zone. I think we're going into a half not lockdown, half still restrictions, and no one quite knows where they are. So I think a lot of people will worry about the uncertainty because you can't plan businesses on a very uncertain economic outlook, but you have to. I mean, you have no choice. You have to. And you have to absorb, I suppose, a lot of uncertainty on behalf of your people. So I think that's what keeps people awake at night, which, on a very practical level, a lot of people who are working in Britain are thinking, we're going back to work. Are we going back to work? How are we going back to work? Do we want to go back to work? Is it a bit scary going back to work? That it's that uncertainty. I mean, on a macro level, of course, I worry about the future, about the economic outlook of the future and whether this is, we've had a real bounce back in Britain, which is fantastic. Obviously, the concern a CEO would have is how sustainable is that bounce back, and what can you plan to invest as a result of the outlook for the economy here and globally, actually. So those kinds of things.
I mean, do you think we're in a little bit of a bubble that's about to burst?
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. I would also say, I sleep well, which is a really good thing. I do sleep well. And that's quite an important thing because I think sleep is really important. Now, everyone has nights where they have disrupted sleep, but I can't, my kind of outlook to that, my personal outlook is if there's something I can't control, I mean, I can't sadly control the macro outlook. So that means I can't do anything about it. What I can control is what we do at ITV and what I do for business more generally, how I can contribute to the well-being of my people and the ITV people, and of helping Britain, like being part of something bigger. I can help with that. So those are the kind of things. So I think this thing about what can you control what you can, and then what you can't control, you've just got to let go worrying about, because it doesn't do you any good. You can't do anything about it. And I think that helps me sleep better.
I couldn't agree more. I do the exact same thing. I just think, is it something that I control? No, let it go. I mean, speaking of ITV, what has it been like the last year?
Well, I mean, it's one of those really, it's in different phases and stages. So we went into the pandemic, obviously, shocked. I mean, we all thought we were going to be coming back in 2 or 3 weeks. So everyone left all their stuff there. No one thought it was going to be nearly a year and more, 15 months. So I think the first thing was, we went into the pandemic and we were in the FTSE 100 as an example, right? And then our advertising revenue halved, productions went from 285 to our daytime hours, and we were producing in Britain, but everything else had to stop. We did news, regional news, and we did the daytime shows, GMB, Good Morning Britain, This Morning, all of those, really, Lorraine, very important to people, those shows. But everything else stopped. All our global production stopped. So no money coming in, really. Income went to so small. So we started we went into proper crisis mode. We just led the organization calmly, but in crisis. And we communicated every single week about what we were doing. It was all about preserving cash, except for investing in our strategic priorities. We just said, until we really, really, really need to stop that, we're not going to stop investing in the things that we have to invest in to emerge from this with our strategy intact, which was things like the hub, BritBot, all the digital side of things. But it was grim. I mean, it was grim because we went overnight from everyone being in the office to everyone working from home. And thank God we had the technology infrastructure, which we'd invested in actually a year before that, only a year before that. So we were able to move seamlessly. A lot of our production team is brilliant, went into work, but we were bringing in no money. So I think that was our biggest single thing, was the whole cash balance sheet survival. I mean, we knew we were surviving. You know, this was about how long, no one knew how long it was going to last. By the time we were in our 6th week, we were like, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So, you know, we did salary cuts, we did for the board, no bonuses for the whole year, just made those decisions very early, very quickly, and explained them. But then what happened is we got production back. We worked with government, with DCMS really, really well, very, very closely. We're talking to them 3, 4, 5 times a week. So we got our soaps back first, then we started getting more UK productions back. That was really important. The government really wanted us to make loads of TV because it was obviously a lifeline for people. And then as we went through, you know, we started just stable, you know, it was stabilizing. And of course, we now leave the worst of the pandemic, we hope, touch wood, we leave that. We're back in the FTSE 100 because there has been this amazing rebound in the economy, and we're very linked to the economy because of the ad market. Now, although we do a lot of our money comes from production has a much longer lead time. So I would say we've emerged from the pandemic stronger, much more resilient, and a much more digital business than when we went into it. So ironically, from the grimmest of times, actually, I mean, there were days where, I mean, there were many days I didn't sleep. From the grimmest of times, I think you emerge kind of, you've done things that make you stronger and give you more of a future. And that is a brilliant thing, really.
Well, I mean, you mentioned being really in time of crisis. I'm going to talk to you more about strategy later, but, you know, what did that look like in practice? Where were you really cutting to your bare bones?
So we didn't cut to the bare bones because we, as I said, we continued to recruit people who were on the digital side. We continued to recruit data and analytical, you know, people in the data and analytics side, so AI experts, technology staff. So we weren't, where we cut to the bone was obviously there was no traveling, so that was easy. We only furloughed production people in that year, and then we stopped furloughing by the 3rd quarter. So we just cut right back, and we did do a major restructuring of the business and created a media and entertainment division. We didn't stop that restructuring. In fact, we accelerated it as a result of COVID. And that was, again, when I say that we've come out a more lean, but much more effective organization, that restructuring was actually part of that.
I think a lot of companies will emphasize with that, having to make themselves leaner in the last year. I mean, as you mentioned, a lot of people were still carrying on as business as usual. How did you engage with them, the people that were still risking their lives going out in the midst of the pandemic?
Very closely. I mean, them, you know, the management team were on the ground. So their day-to-day management team were on the ground. I've done a weekly vodcast every week through the pandemic. And I only moved it to every 2 weeks when things were much rosier, if you like, you know, when things were definitely easing up. That anyone could ask questions to me or to the management board through the vodcast. There was Slido, anonymous. Anyone could ask anything. We have someone who's an ex-CMO, chief medical officer, who did a huge amount of work for us on the ground. He went to all our regional bases, effectively, offices, and answered all their questions, which were more medical or worrying, psychologically worrying, you know, what if this happens? What if that happens? He kind of did a mini roadshow, and I had him on the podcast a few times. The other thing we did is we were already quite strong on mental and physical well-being, but we upped that. We kind of really amplified what we offer everyone, both online and through the phone line, on that whole thing. We did feel good activities. So you could go to an activity if you were at ITV every single day. There was either a class, or there was a talk, or there was something going on every single day. And a lot of people, I mean, loads of people use that. So that was to keep people connected, and also to make sure people could speak up about how lonely they were feeling or how vulnerable they were feeling. So there was no shame in that. They could either do that one-to-one and confidentially, or they could actually join other people who were feeling like them. So we did a whole load of stuff like that.
I mean, talk about, your mental health kind of, and they're not really policies, are they? They're just practices in place. How did you strengthen those compared to what you usually offer? And how did you continue to communicate support?
So what we've always had, so we set up when I joined, we set up a mental health advisory group, which has people from the outside just reflecting to us how we do things and their views. And that, Mind is on that, Young Mind, Scottish Mind. So it's a national thing. Dr. Alex George is on that now, which is brilliant because he has a very different perspective on some things, and he's very articulate. So we've always had that. I suppose what we did is we brought a bit of that into ITV more. So I interviewed Alex for all of ITV and asked him a whole load of questions about how he deals with things, how he dealt with his brother's death, etc. So just bringing things right into them. So that's how we amped it up. It's not like we did anything terribly different, except for the daily activities. We just made sure everybody knew that they could always reach out, and there would always be someone there confidentially to talk to them, whether that was part of their own infrastructure at work or whether that was reaching out to other things that we've set up, which are completely confidential.
That's brilliant. And we kind of briefly mentioned the fact that some people were carrying on business usual and people were obviously working from home. Is that something that you foresee continuing at ITV? Will it be a hybrid workforce continuing going forwards?
Yeah, so we've done a huge amount of work on this. And in fact, our HR director and I and Paul Actmore actually talked about it months and months and months ago, quite early on, kind of last summer. We were saying, okay, what is this going to mean to the future of work, actually? And it is going to change the future of work. And our perspective is it needs to change the future of work for the better, for businesses, but also for individuals. And I think getting that blend right is really important, because I think that if you only think about the individual, then you're not doing the best thing for the business. And if you only think about the business, then you're not always listening to the needs of the individual. So what we're doing is we've got an entire blueprint where we are doing workshops right across the organization. We're halfway through all of that, where people can say what their individual preferences are, but managers can say what the preferences of the business are. And we're trying to match that. And also we're being very clear, because of the cultural implications of people having staggered shifts and not all being in one place at one time. There are quite, I think, a lot of cultural implications to that, in terms of the culture you have can become quite eroded if you don't have the buzz, the energy, the creativity, the collaboration. We're very, obviously we're a creative organization, we make things. So it's been very important for us, I think, to say these things are mandatory for everybody to attend. So if you have a department meeting and it's a in-person meeting, you can't ask to dial into that. That's good. That's got to be in person. If you're going to do an away day, everyone's got to be there physically, unless there's a medical reason not to be, obviously. But it's kind of being very clear about what we expect when we've actually set up what the right structure is for work. So I think we're putting a huge amount of time, thought, and effort into it, because I think getting this right as you can, and then reviewing it after 3 months, after 6 months, after 9 months is going to be very important, because we're not going to get it right first off, but getting it more right than wrong is going to be really important.
In practice, do you have any idea of what that balance will look like? Will you have a minimum number of days in, or have you not kind of?
We're not being prescriptive, because we are a business with many different businesses in it. We have our studios business, where if you're on a production, you're in every day. You cannot opt to be. I mean, no one would dream of asking to work from home if they were on the set of Love Island, or I'm a Celebrity, or running Saturday Night Takeaway. I mean, it's just not. You're in, because you're in a production. But then what you then do with your time away when you're doing other stuff, that's where they will engage. If you're in sales, there will be a different structure, because you're client facing, you're customer facing, and you need to be around much more. So Kelly, who runs that area, is working very, very hard on what is possible in that area. There'll be a lot of other areas like web development, where they could, people could work from home every day, as they've done really efficiently and effectively through this lockdown. So it's not going to be one size fits all for ITV, and I think every business is different. But some people will be in like as they have always been, and other people won't be. It'll be a hybrid structure.
It sounds like you're sort of putting the power of choice into each kind of department.
Yeah, and that's where I think it works, because each department has different business requirements, and they have to match those requirements with the needs of people. And we're very keen to get that balance right, but we have to be very business focused about it as well. And I think our people totally get that.
Mm. And then speaking of remote working, there's for a long time, especially for working from home mothers, there's been kind of an unfairly attached stigma to that. Do you think this kind of 18-month experiment of working from home will cause a regression, or do you think it will actually cause be an equalizer for women?
See, I think this whole remote working thing is not just about women. I think this is about everybody, because equality is about men and women. And I've always said that. I've said that for like 25 years. I think you've got to get everybody on board with this. Yeah. And everybody's mindset has got to be open to the fact that people can be as effective working remotely as they are being visibly present in an office. I think the pandemic should have changed those old-fashioned mindsets that say if you're not in the office and you're not working really, really late and you're not there at 7 in.the morning and you're not doing well. I think that this pandemic the benefit is everyone has been able, if they have been able to work from home, even in the most senior jobs. You might not have preferred to do that. You might not have always been as effective doing that, but you have managed to do that. So I think there's a big attitudinal change, which is positive. I think it's important we don't see this as a women's issue. It clearly will make it easier for women to ask to work remotely if they want to, especially, I've always said that when I've always found that I've been at most threat of losing, senior good women when they actually have their second child. That does happen. It happens a lot, because nursery costs go up. You end up paying in commuting and nursery or nannies the same amount as you're earning. Right?
Yeah,
70,000. It's a ridiculous thing. You don't get any tax relief on it. So they just look at it and they say, "Oh, I'm just going to take some time out. It's not worth the fag." And actually now, I'm hoping so many women in that middle management tier in particular will say, "Hang on a minute, I don't need to stop working. I can take my maternity leave and then I can do a phased re-entry and I can do some working from home and not feel that they are not feel guilty about it." A lot of women feel guilt, even in leadership positions, asking to be able to work remotely. So I do think I really very much hope that will be an equalizer and that we will retain a lot more leaders, female leaders in the workforce.
And you're right, I think it is really an equalizer for so many, people with disabilities, people from a lower socioeconomic background where the commute and the cost of the commute might put them off. So you're completely right. Now let's talk a bit about advertising. As you said, with a number of people indoors, I'm sure out of home and just traditional advertising revenue was down, but digital advertising revenue was up, I'm sure. How has that impacted your strategy now that life is beginning to resume as normal?
Right, so we don't do any posters, which is out of home. We obviously we have linear TV, ITV 1, 3, 4, and then we have our digital channels, ITV 2, B and CITV, and we have our hub, which is our digital channel effectively because it's on, it's online. And actually linear advertising has been very, very strong as long as the economy has been strong, because you can't expect people to advertise when they haven't got anyone buying anything. No one could go out, so no one could really, other than online shopping. No one was traveling, no one was going to the cinema, no one was eating out, no one was going to Thorpe Park or all of those things. They're all advertisers, they all advertise with ITV. So it wasn't so much about linear, it was about there was nothing to buy and nothing to do. But the people that were able to advertise did advertise a lot, and we attracted quite a lot of new advertisers because they were the brands that wouldn't have been able to afford TV before, but small businesses, for instance, who were online and were able to come in and advertise. That was excellent. And remember, the ratings were fantastic and continue to be strong because people are watching a lot more TV. And digital did do very well. But actually it was about the type of advertiser. Out of home is different. There was no one walking around, whereas everyone was at home watching TV. So it was a different reason. But we saw a very, very strong bounce back when restrictions eased last year, if you remember. So in October, we had a lovely window in July, August, September. That bounced back very hard. And then, of course, now it's bounced back again. The ad market, because the economy is back and shops are open, it's bounced back very, very well. So I've already said in our quarterly presentation that the advertising market is very strong at the moment.
How do you think it's going to impact your strategy going forward?
The ad market, it doesn't really, because we've taken into account the fact that the ad market is cyclical, if you like. It's certainly volatile in that if the economy comes to a grinding stop, there's not a lot we can do about it. So the strategy is really based on ITV becoming a digital media and entertainment business that connects millions of people and shapes and reflects society. So reflects society, but also shapes society. And our strategy is very much about being more than TV, because we have got this massive, actually the leading unscripted, when I say unscripted, I mean entertainment producer in the world. I mean, that's in the world. And we have a very, very strong scripted business, which is a drama business. Now they make stuff, not just for ITV, they make stuff for all the streamers, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, but they also make things for cable companies in the States, for Sky, so a very big production business, which is not dependent at all on advertising. And then of course there's the free-to-air business, put it that way, the free-to-air, because we're not funded by anybody. We're funded actually on free-to-air by advertising. But we have shifted a lot to digital advertising. Linear is always going to be important, and linear is particularly important because it's the only place you can get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 million viewers. I can count. It goes up from 5 to 12. It's, those big shows get very, very large audiences. You can't really get that you can't get that anywhere else. So it's a massive USP.
So speaking of accelerated digitalization, so I think you're saying there is very much a future for linear TV. And are you worried about cord cutting?
Well, we don't have a cord to cut.
No, because you're not on a license. You're not like the BBC. You don't have
got a cord. We have an online business, which is a really strong business. We have an advertising platform which we've invested in called Planet V, which is an addressable advertising platform, so we can do targeted advertising on Hub. We have 23 million registered users on Hub, so we have the data of all of those users. That's very potent. And then we have a free-to-air linear business, no cord to cut. So we don't have that threat. Our issues are all about shifting viewing patterns and how that works and how we get that balance. The key for us is to keep people watching our programs. That's why the quality of those programs, the creativity of those programs is really critical. And we do that well. I mean, we've had the top 2 dramas in the country. In fact, we've had 6 out of the 10 dramas are all ITV dramas, but Line of Duty is made by ITV and it's on the BBC, and that broke every living record for drama. And number 2 was the Pembrokeshire Murders, which was on ITV and made by ITV. So that's pretty good going.
I don't watch Line of Duty, but I know fans are terribly frustrated with the ending because that's all I saw for weeks.
I'm not going to say that to the production company. I mean, I think they've done a brilliant job. I think it's all subjective, isn't it? It's like, yeah. There was a lot of attention on that whole program.
So much. What about Netflix? How is BritBox kind of keeping up with competitors and streaming services?
Our relationship with Netflix is an interesting one because we compete with them for eyeballs, but we also sell them a lot of programs. So we have a very good relationship with them actually. But we all of us have got to make sure that we're putting on programs that draw people in. Now, BritBox is a niche streaming service, which is about British content, British originated content, British talent, and it's not trying to compete with Netflix. The ideal scenario is Netflix and BritBox in the same home. 2 subscriptions, and that's what's happening. So our biggest take up of subscriptions for BritBox are in homes that already have Netflix.
It sounds like the focus necessarily isn't on, I guess, as you say, competing, just on creating good content. trying to just win those eyeballs.
It is. It's about having the right technology and the right user experience and the right marketing and the right kind of noise. So you've just described the noise around line of duty. You need that kind of noise to get people to be interested, because there are so many programs to stand out is more and more difficult. But then, of course, it is about the content. People have to be able to find the content. So the user experience, the way you curate both the online presence and also BritBox is incredibly important. You don't have that in free to air. It's a schedule. It's already curated for you beautifully, right? You know what's coming. Whereas online, it's a very different world. So we've taken on a lot of people with new skills being skills that we didn't have in our linear business. We've brought in a huge number of people to BritBox who have only digital capability, and by that I mean they've worked for streamers, they've worked for pay TV, they've worked in those businesses only.
And then moving away from strategy, last year yourself and senior executives took a 20% pay cut in the wake of the pandemic. What else can leaders do you think, to show solidarity with staff in tough times?
I think it's really important that you keep that communication going all the time. I think it's, I know the feedback I've had is how appreciated that is by people at all levels. You sometimes think, the more senior people are, they don't need it. That's not true. Actually, at every level, in every organization, people want you to be communicating with them, but doing it openly and honestly, and not kind of cushioning it or, gilding it in any way. It's like, just tell us what is going on as you know it. And I've always said to people, I will tell them the truth. And if I don't have an answer to the question, I would just say, I actually don't know the answer to that question. I won't try and muddle my way through it. And that trust is a really important thing. And I hope that we have that at ITV. I certainly know I had that at EasyJet when I was there. I had built up, because it was a very fractured organization when I joined. And I know that the amount of time I spent meeting people, talking to them, but most importantly, listening to them and acting on things, and then listening to the bad, like the negative stuff, as well as the positive stuff, was really, really important to them. And after my 8 years there, I still know, that was hugely appreciated by people across the organization. And I hope that's the same. We get very good feedback from people at ITV about that. So I think that communication, but the most important thing is type of communication. It's open, it's personal, it's honest. I reply to all my emails. I have someone who helps me with that, but I will always want to reply to every single email I get from every member of staff. And so they can feel free to email me. I think it's not just about me, it's about the management board. Our management board is a really fantastic team of people. They really know what they're doing. They really understand the stuff. And one of the things here is about lessons, leadership lessons. I mean, one of my biggest things is get the best people every single time. Never compromise, particularly in your executive leadership team. Get the best people, because in any crisis, they really come to the fore, and they're there for their people as well. So they're there to, communicate, but also to absorb, to listen, to act, to drive the strategy, to know instinctively, what is the right thing and what isn't. So honestly, never compromise on talent.
I'm really impressed that you reply to your staff's emails, all of the emails.
I do. I try anyway. And if I miss one, Julie tells me.
That's so great. Another thing is, in the last year, there's been so many non-salary benefits, such as flexible working. Will companies need to bolster their non-salary benefits after this past year? And what is ITV doing in that field?
We do. We do a lot. We're a really nice place to work. I mean, the environment is lovely. It's a very creative environment. It's good space. You've got studios, you've got talent, you can go to stuff, you can go to the shows. There's a lot of good benefit. We have a cycle to work scheme. We have a loan scheme for travel. We've already done all of that. I think flexible working, as you call it, I mean, we prefer to call it smart working. We call it smart working because flexible working has connotations of the past. I think smart working is a huge benefit. as long as we can match the business with the individual. But I think that will be a big step forward, because, you know, not commuting and being able to have that flexibility is really important. But I think, you know, we have got a lot of benefits already at ITV. It's not about adding them, it's about making sure that smart working works.
So what can other businesses do to retain and attract talent in that kind of space?
Well, I mean, I just think, I always look at this and I think you want your working environment to be as fun and as attractive a place as it's possible to be, because you want people to come into work. You do want that because it creates a vibrancy and an atmosphere and a culture, and it actually is very positive for collaboration. And we know that collaboration is always the answer to a lot of problems, right? If you've got a problem, you get a few brains in a room, it's always going to be better than having one brain thinking about it. I'll give you an example of that. You know, we were absolutely racking our brains about I'm a Celebrity last year and the fact that we couldn't get to Australia. They sat in a room, you know, lots of people talking. They said, look, why not? Let's just think of how we might do it here. And, you know, it sounds as if a castle would be obvious. It obviously wasn't obvious. It was like, we had to then think through what would that mean? How would it change it? Would it change the format? Would Ant and Dec be happy? They did all of that collaboratively. A big creative team of people sat together and worked that out. So I think collaboration is incredibly important. So you want an environment where people can collaborate. So I just think you have to make it a place people want to come. Work has to be a good place to be. You spend a lot of your time there.
No, I couldn't agree more. And a problem shared is a problem halved. And finally, it's perhaps an impossible question, I appreciate, but where do you see British businesses in a year's time?
Well, look, I think that, you know, the Prime Minister has got this slogan, which is build back better. I think that's the right slogan, if that makes sense. I think we do have to build back better. I think Brexit is behind us. Let's stop talking about it. Let's just make what we've got really, really good. I think coming out, the green agenda is actually very, very important. I think that is a positive agenda for businesses and for society. I think coming out of it, people are thinking far more about how people are feeling and trying to accommodate that as well. So I think, you know, the way to get the economy back on its feet is to get consumers feeling confident, so people feeling confident about going out, spending money, having a good time. ITV has an important part to play in that because people are watching us every single day. And so we can play an important part in that, and we can play an important part in supporting advertisers who are all part of the economy, whether they're small, medium, or very large businesses. We can help them promote themselves and project themselves. And what I've really noticed is how many advertisers have a different tone to their advertising because of the 18 months we've had. And that's also good because they're really thinking through how they use TV and how the media mix works. So going back to your point, I think, you know, we need to increase confidence in people being out and about, doing all the things they used to do, because that's the way the economy will come back. You know, of course, we owe a lot of money. The government has to find money to pay back an awful lot. But the way that will happen is if the economy is strong and we can start, you know, really driving it, and it's got to be sustainable. So that's the thing most business leaders, I think, are thinking about now, is how to keep the economy buoyant for the 3 to 5 years coming up, because that will help a lot. It will help us get out of that trough of debt.
And hopefully, you know, June 21st is soon coming. We can begin to build back better. Hopefully it will open up again. Thank you so much for your time, Carolyn. I'm afraid we're out of time.
Thanks very much.